Now class, this is Anabell. She's new in town, so I want you to be nice and try to be friends with her.
The class just stared at the new girl the teacher just introduced. I mean, how could they not? She was normal looking at first glance with her long brown hair, fair skin and average figure. But what made them stare were her eyes. They were cat's eyes, dark blue with slit-like pupils. This small characteristic made her an outcast and an easy target for bullying. That, and the fact that she rarely talked and never spoke against it. They would always laugh at her, always laughing, over and over. But one day, a boy named Vincent came up to her and smiled as if they were long-lost friends, and started talking to her. This shocked Anabell, to say the least. Why would such a nice boy come and talk to her? Was he trying to be the cool guy, or was he dared to talk to her? It didn't matter though. She was just happy that someone finally approached her. As time passed, the two grew closer, but Anabell's bullying just increased and became crueler. Students would fill her desk with bugs, lock her in the restroom with the lights off, and even push her down the stairs. The laughing just never seemed to stop. One afternoon, Anabell found a note in her locker. It was a love letter from Vincent. It read that he would be waiting at the local park to hear her answer. She ripped the note into pieces, thinking that it was a cruel joke, and went straight home. Later that night, Anabell received a call from Vincent's house. It was his mother, asking if Anabell knew where he was since he had not returned from school. Anabell froze in her spot. Vincent couldn't have been at the park this entire time, could he? Anabell continued to walk to the park in silence, until she started to hear something that could only be described as laughing. She ran towards the laughing. It sounded harsher and colder as she grew closer to the source. Then finally, she froze. There before her was a group of 5 men, surrounding a heap on the ground. Under the cheap light of the lamppost, she could clearly see that the heap was a bloody corpse. The body was mutilated. The skin and flesh on its hands was peeled off. Bones stuck out and were twisted in horrifying ways. But what had Anabell trembling was the severed head that was placed beneath one man's foot. It was Vincent's. Anabell stared into the dead eyes of the boy as she listened to the man's laughter. They just kept laughing and laughing and laughing. Hey! The man quieted their laughing to turn around to face her. They all smirked as one of them came up to her, ready to continue their fun, until she rammed her hand through his chest and ripped out his heart. As the man's body fell, she crushed the heart in her hand, gushing blood all over. The men were petrified. Anabell glared at them with bloodlusting madness. Despite that the men were silent, she could still hear them laughing. Blood slowly dripped down her eyes, as if she were crying. Anabell had finally snapped. "The fuck are you laughing at?" Before the man could run, Anabell latched her teeth onto one of them and ripped out his jugular. The man gurgled and vomited blood as he slowly started to die. Anabell looked up to see the remaining men run. She smiled an insane smile and whispered, "You can't leave until you told me what you were laughing at." Their screams filled the night air. Anabell fell to her knees and reached her blood-covered hands over the severed head, holding it close to her chest. Once again, bloody tears fell from her eyes as she grieved. Suddenly, a bloody bone hand rested on her lap.
Anabell,
Anabell pulled away, shocked to hear a familiar voice. She looked down to see Vincent's smiling face and very much alive eyes staring up at her.
I waited all this time for you, and you finally came. I'm glad.
Anabell sobbed harder as she held him tightly. Now, you would think that Anabell would suddenly live happily ever after in hiding, because even though Vincent is now a severed head, he is still alive, right? Do you really think she would be satisfied by that little slaughter? That her anger would be satisfied? Wrong. She will never be satisfied, so we must stomach her wrath of her anger.
Action News presents a mass murder taking place at a local park. The victims are identified as 5 middle-aged males, being completely mutilated. Police say there was a trail of blood possibly belonging to the 6th victim, but the trail ended not too far from the scene. More tonight at 11.